Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so glad you're here today because we are unpacking something absolutely wild. We're diving headfirst into an ancient, incredibly high-stakes ethical dilemma pulled straight from the Vaka Parva. It's one of those stories that literally pushes human morality to its absolute breaking point, testing the limits of duty, survival, and some seriously hidden power. We're going to break down the intense logic and the jaw-dropping decisions made by these characters. So, let's jump right in. Would you sacrifice a guest to save your own family? Man, just think about that for a second. It's a terrifying, life-or-death question. Think of it kind of like an ancient version of the trolley problem, but with the stakes cranked all the way up to maximum. Imagine being completely backed into a corner, right? Where your survival and the survival of the people you love most in the world hinges on condemning a totally innocent person who just sought shelter under your roof. This is the exact suffocating reality our characters are dealing with in today's source text. Section 1. A deadly Rakshasa tribute, the unthinkable choice. To figure out why this impossible question is even on the table, we've got to look at the dire setup. We've got a family targeted by a monstrous entity, a Rakshasa, and this monster is demanding a deadly tribute. It's literally a ticking clock of doom for everyone involved.
Now, the specific makeup of his Brahmana's family makes the whole thing so much more agonizing. The text is super explicit here. It tells us he has only one son, who is of very tender years, and only one daughter, described as young and helpless. Oh, and of course, his wife. They are staring down absolutely imminent death. So, this isn't just some random generic group of people. The source material is really going out of its way to highlight their extreme vulnerability. It really underscores just how severe these stakes are. This Brahmana is basically looking at the total, helpless annihilation of his entire world. And then, right when all hope seems totally lost, we get this shocking intervention from Kunti, a guest staying in their home. She says, "I have 5 sons, O Brahmana. Let one of them go, carrying in thy behalf tribute of that Rakshasa." Just wow. Think about the sheer magnitude of that offer. To save this Brahmana's highly vulnerable family, Kunti is voluntarily offering up one of her own 5 sons to walk straight into the jaws of a monster. It's an offer of unimaginable, almost unbelievable sacrifice.
Which brings us to Section 2, the ultimate ethical dilemma, duty over survival. Now, you would think the Brahmana would immediately fall to his knees, thank her, and accept this incredible lifeline. But he doesn't. He flat out refuses, and honestly, understanding exactly why he refuses is the master key to unlocking the moral framework of this entire text. This perfectly illustrates the agonizing choice that's just tearing the Brahmana apart. He's stuck between 2 completely impossible realities. On the one hand, he can sacrifice himself and his vulnerable family. Obviously devastating. But on the other hand, he can accept Kunti's offer, sacrifice his guest, and commit what his own code considers the highest possible sin. For him, this isn't simply a choice between life and death. No, it's a choice between physical death and total permanent moral annihilation. To really get his refusal, we have to dig into the Brahmana's incredibly strict code of honor. He explicitly states he will never sacrifice a Brahmana or a guest just to save himself. He explains that abandoning someone who's come to your house or sought your protection, that's fundamentally cruel and deeply sinful. He also notes that causing the death of a Brahmana is the absolute highest sin, and here's the kicker. There is zero expiation for it, no forgiveness, period. Because of that, according to the wise, self-destruction is actually preferable to sacrificing another person. So he decides he'd rather perish alongside his wife today than ever sanction such a horrific act. His internal debate finally culminates in this incredibly grave, dramatic conclusion. He says, "I think a reluctant sacrifice of one's own self is better than the reluctant sacrifice of a Brahmana." He logically reasons that, hey, if he just lets the monster kill him, he's not actually guilty of self-destruction, right? Because someone else is taking his life. But if he deliberately consents to Kunti's son dying in his place, he's committing a cruel, highly censorable act that he can absolutely never escape. His moral rigidity is just ironclad. He chooses his duty over his own family's survival. And that pivots us to Section 3, Kunti's secret weapon, a pragmatic solution. So the Brahmana has basically locked down the whole situation with his strict ethical code. He utterly refuses to let her son die. But Kunti? She's about to expertly pivot this entire conversation. She completely agrees with him that Brahmanas must be protected, but she happens to have a brilliant workaround. Kunti's response completely flips the script. She tells him, "This Rakshasa will not be able to kill my son, for that son of mine is endued with great prowess and energy and skilled in mantras." Talk about dramatic irony. Kunti isn't offering up some helpless victim here. She is knowingly, confidently unleashing an absolute powerhouse.
She reassures the Brahmana that, look, no son of hers is less dear to her, but she knows with absolute certainty that her boy is perfectly capable of surviving this encounter.
Let's break down Kunti's logical, fiercely confident master plan. Step 1. Her son is going to faithfully deliver the food tribute to the Rakshasa, checking off that terrible requirement. Step 2. He's going to engage the monster in combat, and she just casually drops the little detail that he's killed huge, mighty Rakshasas before. And Step 3. He'll successfully rescue himself. It's genius because it perfectly bypasses the Brahmana's whole ethical roadblock. He isn't actually sacrificing a guest at all. He's just allowing a highly skilled warrior to handle a local threat.
There is, however, a catch. Kunti adds a strict, absolutely non-negotiable condition to this life-saving offer: complete and total secrecy. She tells the Brahmana he cannot disclose this fact to anybody. But why? I mean, if her son is this legendary hero, why keep it a secret? Well, the text gives us a super specific and frankly fascinating reason for this.
It all comes down to what we can call the preceptor rule. Ancient wisdom dictates that if a student imparts knowledge without their teacher's assent, they will no longer be able to profit from that knowledge. Basically, Kunti is terrified that if people find out about her son's incredible power, they'll just constantly hound him out of curiosity, trying to learn his secrets. And if he's forced to share his knowledge improperly, he could lose his abilities entirely. So that's the deal. He saves the family, but the Brahmana has to keep his mouth totally shut about how it went down.
Which brings us to our final section. The hero steps up. The pact is sealed. The text describes the Brahmana and his wife becoming just exceedingly glad when they hear this. I mean, Kunti's pragmatic, loophole-finding speech is literally described as nectar to them. That agonizing tension finally breaks, and they immediately assent to the plan.
So with the pact sealed, Kunti, with the immensely relieved Brahmana right there with her, formally approaches her son. The text refers to him as the son of Vayu, who is also known as Bhima. She brings this terrifying, monumental assignment right to his feet. She's essentially asking him to casually stroll into the lair of a monster that has literally paralyzed an entire region with fear. And how exactly does this great warrior respond to being told he has to go fight a deadly monster as a human tribute? With absolute, unwavering resolve. He just says, "So be it." 3 words, no hesitation, no fear whatsoever, just total acceptance of his duty. It so perfectly punctuates the incredible tension we've been tracking throughout this entire text.
Which really leaves us with this final thought. When faced with an impossible ethical dilemma, are we sometimes just blind to the hidden strengths of those around us? The Brahmana genuinely thought he was looking at the end of his world, entirely unaware that the guest sitting right there in his living room possessed the exact power needed to conquer his absolute darkest nightmare. It really makes you wonder how often we trap ourselves in these rigid either-or choices, completely forgetting that sometimes the most extraordinary solutions are sitting quietly right beside us. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll see you next time.